you was to thank Professor Vaidyanathan. I have no presidential which implies wise words to conclude what great wisdom and which Professor Vaidyanathan shared with us. Now, I also totally agree with them about authorship and recommending the purchase of books written by the author. So, along with his books, sometimes think of my books also. I would also like to repeat how much wit Professor Vaidyanathan and how much good sense in what he shared with us this evening. He's right. The axis of economic power has shifted. And that has to be a recognition in India principally. It was purely a chance that Prime Minister Vajpayee told me, you better now go across the road and move from South Block to North Block. I did plead with him that I'm not an economist, I was not trained as an economist. I have very little interest in economics except trying to make money. He said this discussion went on for about 15 days until friends told me it's very bad policy to argue with prime ministers, you better go across. So I walked across from South Block to North Block. There was a posse of correspondents at the entrance to North Block who asked me, and I hadn't thought of it, it was impromptu, who asked me, "Aapki policy kya hai?" Now I hadn't thought of any answer to give to these highly intelligent correspondents who know all the answers. So I said, मेरी पॉलिसी है कि गृहिणी की टुकिया में आना और गरीब के पेट में दाना. Yes, I did say, but if you, I would like to attribute this sentence to the wisdom that Professor Vaidyanathan has demonstrated, because that really is the essence of what we are trying to achieve. Granny ki tukiya mein aana. It's not a sexist remark. It is a recognition that women have a tactile sense of money. Men don't have that. So they must always have money wherever they keep it. So that the purchasing power of the household continues to be where it should be. And Professor Vaidyanathan is entirely right. The center of gravity of the economic strength has of course shifted from Europe to Asia along with many other things. But it is the Indian woman who is really the stable and the central core of our savings and stability in family savings. I do want to thank Professor Vaidyanathan for observing that he's kept a minister waiting. I'd like to tell him that I'm really in India, nothing is as an ex-minister. So as an ex-minister, I have no illusions about what I am.
And are you a minister in waiting? No.
You are a future minister, that is why
No,
you
minister in waiting.
Now I don't want to take too much time after that extremely wise address that we have had benefited from. But the question that arises, what ails our economy today? I've been endeavoring to find an answer to this, and I come to an answer very often that we have no economic deficiency. The present government has more economists than any other government past or future. Now there is a lesson to be learned from this. Friends, I did work in the North Block for some time, but I learned two sentences. One is from Truman, who said, please give me a one-handed economist as an advisor. Because I hope Professor Vaidyanathan will forgive me. But economists are given to saying on the one hand and on the other hand. For a non-economist, this is very difficult to decide. The other is a rather flippant remark. I toyed with the idea of doing it unless the officers in the Ministry of Finance nearly went from revolt. I said, I'm going to put a board outside my office saying, men at work, economists, please stay away. The officer said, don't do that, sir, because none of the economists are here. I wish to share with you. I think that is a sound and a very fine, I don't want to call it indigenous, but I do wish to call it Indian or Hindu economic philosophy. And I think the philosophy that innately inhabits all Indians is firstly, we are enjoined, and it's our dharma not in the sense of ritual or puja, it's our dharma to produce the maximum that we can. If you are a farmer, if you are a goldsmith, it's our dharma to produce the maximum and produce the best quality. And it's our dharma to share. As children in the village, we were told when the food came that this is for the bird, this is for the cows, this is for the village Brahmin, this is dog. But you must share. The third is you must save. And the fourth is that you must also, from your saving, give something to charity. And these are, at least in rural India, at least in Rajasthan, continue to be the guiding principles. I don't know what is wrong with these principles. I think they are very sound economic principles. And I do get very confused when, Professor Vaidyanathan, I hope you'll forgive me, when I hear very wise economists going into formulae and all kinds of complicated solutions for what is what we need is a recognition which you have yourself said. We are not an export-driven economy. Our economy's strength is on internal consumption. Make the consumption by our citizens easier. If your supply side glitches are such that what needs is not available and you have highly centralized everything, then prices will go up. It's a complicated question and we need to address it. Professor Vaidyanathan told us by the shift of the global center of gravity. The 20th century was the century of Europe. If you examine, it's a very colonial economy, it's a very colonial energy, but Europe certainly had excess energy, and that excess energy resulted in colonizing almost every continent of the globe. But along with colonizing the excess energy of the European civilization, which was undoubtedly a great civilization, produced the Renaissance, it has destroyed the indigenous in the two Americas. It has destroyed the indigenous in Australia, and it has destroyed the indigenous in Africa. It came very close to destroying whatever we are in India. And I believe that if we survive the depredations of the colonizing powers of 20th century, now that era is over. Its reality is over. And what India has to recognize, what our governments have to recognize, is that we are no longer dependent on the so-called now need our assistance. We must therefore have what is sometimes called the animal spirit, revive the animal spirit in India. The Indian citizen must stand up, not as a mendicant, but as a giver, because it is part of our dharma to share, to give. When I was given this responsibility, I found that we were receiving aid. It was called aid or monetary support. Countries the size of Belgium, giving annually, it is giving to India $150,000. Another country giving $200,000. I asked of the ministry, what on earth are we taking all this money for? We've got enough money. So I said, well, can you explain to me what we accept this? So there is no reason, but it's just been documented. Now this is true, absolutely true. And I'm not boasting about it. I called for the piece of paper and I said, from next month 1st of date, please stop taking aid from all these countries. And if we don't need this aid, then we will stand up on our own, and we don't need the global institutions. This center of gravity of the Western World was earlier in Europe, and it has caused so much loss, 2 great wars. This is now ended. The center of gravity has shifted to India. We need to recognize where we are, and we need to recognize the innate strength as a country, but for doing that, we have to let the individual citizen free. Don't arrest the citizen's growth. Don't arrest the citizen's thinking. That is my very pleasant duty, Professor Vaidyanathan, for great wisdom that you shared with us. Wisdom that is combined with such wonderful wit. I must express my very grateful thanks to you on behalf of the institution, as also on my personal behalf. Thank you very much, Professor Vaidyanathan.